What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's Rocket Mortgage Classic. If you like birdies, boy, do I have one for you. Detroit Golf Club likely to just lay down and take a bunch of birdies or better from these guys this week in Detroit. Should be a blast. I believe we've got the best field we've ever seen in Detroit because we've got a situation where guys like Justin Thomas adding this to his schedule because he's on the outside looking in of the FedEx Cup playoffs. So it's a pretty interesting little board, pretty interesting little field. We're going to go through the data for the golf course, the data for the players. We're going to run a custom model at the end of the show and see if we can find the best plays without using too much of our gut instinct and bending the knee to the data a little bit. Here we go. The golf course is Detroit Golf Club. The website is RickRunGood.com. My data website that is for fantasy golf betting, and Detroit Golf Club and the Rocket Mortgage. Remember, this is a new event. This kind of came on the scene with the 3M Open a couple of years ago. This is only the fifth time we are going to actually put this event on, which in the scheme of the PGA Tour, that's very, very new. That's an infant. And the scoring around Detroit Golf Club has generally been very strong. 20 to 25 under par winning the event. It is a golf course that is not particularly penal off the tee, plays to about 7,400 yards on a par 72, and you can basically bomb it without much regard for accuracy. You think about guys who have won this event or have had good success at this event, Cam Davis, Bryson DeChambeau, Matthew Wolff. I mean, you can just basically get around here without much regard for precision. Just go out and try to pile up as many birdies as you can, hit it as far as you can. If you look at the regression model here on RickRunGood.com, there's not really a ton that stands out here. This is a way to look back at the last handful of years of strokes gained and statistics, and basically for this event, it's only 4 years, and look at all the other courses and what types of players have success at Detroit Golf Club. And truly, there's not a lot that stands out. Strokes gained total is 9th, which means there's only 8 other courses on the PGA Tour schedule in which strokes gained total is more correlated to success. That means the best players are usually getting to the top of the board. Strokes gained putting is 12th, which means there's only 11 other courses in which strokes gained putting is more correlated to success. Kind of makes sense if you're in a birdie fest. Just ask John Rahm, you're going to have to make a lot of putts along the way. And this is one thing I don't think I mentioned, but I'm sure you'll probably hear on the coverage this week, or at least you should. This is, from what I remember, the flattest course on the PGA Tour. Like shot length, just elevation change, I'm pretty sure it's the flattest course on the PGA Tour. There's only like 40 feet of elevation change or something like that over the acreage that we have around Detroit Golf Club. If you look at the stats and then you look at how every golfer has been playing in the last 36 rounds, you can get something called adjusted fit. And that's what I have down here. So this basically, and you can look at this for any number of rounds that you want. Let's change this a little bit so I can get the salaries in here. You'll see who stands out over the last 24 rounds. Max Homa actually gets a very good adjusted fit number along with Rickie Fowler and Collin Morikawa, better than Tony Finau's adjusted fit, despite the fact that Tony Finau won this event last year. Big difference between course history and course fit. You don't need to have played this golf course to have an adjusted fit number, which is what we're using here. Harris English rates out well. Brian Harman rates out well. Believe it or not, you go a little bit further down the board, you'll see guys like Christian Bezuidenhout, Austin Eckroach, Justin Suh get a pretty big boost around this place. Thomas Dietrich, we might talk about him a little bit. So there, you can filter this for any number of rounds that you want, and you can see how that fit changes. But what I really think we're going to look for are birdie makers. We are going to give a little bit of a benefit to distance over accuracy, but you're just going to have to be able to pile it up. We might go to putting just a little bit, but this will probably be a pretty standard model when we get to that at the end of the episode. Here's the cheat sheet, and you'll see there are 5 golfers over $10,000, led by a $10,900 Tony Finau, Collin Morikawa 10.6, Rickie Fowler 10.4, Max Homa 10.2, Justin Thomas $10,000. Very, very interesting top of the board here. Let's start with Tony Finau, which, by the way, this is the golfer profiles. So if you've noticed in the last couple of weeks, I've made a couple of adjustments. I've added this button so you can easily click on major championships. You don't have to filter by name. And then now I just added this button where you can easily see tournament history. I got tired of just typing in like the first 4 letters every single time I wanted to look at that. So I just thought it'd be easier if I made a button so you could easily see the course history for that week. So here's Hunky Tony. $10,900, which is, I'm going to guess, I have not looked this up, the most expensive he's ever been. I might be wrong there. I'm going to rule out the Tour Championship. So 2021 Tour Championship, he was 11,800. Now that is a staggered start, and I usually throw that out when we talk about things like this. So here he was at the Texas Open in 2021. He was $11,000. That was the last time he was this expensive. So are we getting what we are paying for? I would argue the answer is no. The stretch of golf from Tony Finau is not particularly good. He wins in Mexico. He's got a couple of okay starts after that. We are not seeing the level of approach play that we've seen from him from basically the start of 2023 until the Wells Fargo Championship. His last couple of starts have not been very positive. And the other big problem here is after really rolling the Rockwell from last year's Open Championship up until basically the American Express of this year, or maybe even I'll give him to the Match Play or the Players Championship, he's lost the flat stick. He's lost multiple strokes putting in 5 straight events. He has lost multiple strokes putting in 6 out of 7. This is very concerning for a couple of reasons. One, it's far from the DNA, not necessarily the DNA, but like what got him to this level of golf. And also, if we think this is going to turn into a birdie fest where you've got to be 25 under par, and if strokes gained putting is one of the highest correlated stats to success, then how are you going to buy in on a guy who's basically in the worst putting stretch of his career? This doesn't necessarily feel more like a bounce back opportunity as much of it is a slump. You know, he gained 4.5 strokes putting around Detroit Golf Club in his victory last year. I mean, that would be a pretty astonishing feat if you were to go out and gain 4.5 strokes putting this week. And oh, by the way, he's not hitting it as well. And oh, by the way, he's the most expensive he's basically ever been. So that to me, that's 3 strikes, you're out. I can't imagine a scenario in which Tony Finau makes a significant portion of my lineups or my investments unless he is like 3% owned, which I cannot imagine. Collin Morikawa, we need to look on a per round basis here. It's been a very, very strange season for Collin. And it continued last week at the Travelers Championship. What you'll notice is his stretch of gaining basically a stroke per round on approach just fell off a cliff at the Travelers Championship on Thursday. That's the bad news. The good news is he really did bounce back. You know, he shot, I think he went 74-63 on Thursday, Friday, but it was just not enough to make the cut. I believe he missed the cut on the number, gained 5.2 strokes on Friday. So really that round at TPC River Highlands, 5.2 strokes gained per round, was his best round since the opening round of the 2023 Players Championship, in which he gained 7.7 strokes gained. So this has been a very bizarre year. I've had a lot of season-long investments in Collin Morikawa. I do not necessarily believe I have gotten the returns that I'm looking for. However, I think the WD at the Memorial, the miscut at the Travelers Championship, it's going to look a lot worse than the round-by-round stats actually are. I think this lays out a story that Collin is actually a lot closer than maybe he believes, maybe we believe, maybe the industry believes. But at $10,600 with a couple of popular names right below, like, you're going to see me roll back out to Collin here pretty quickly. The 3 popular names, and I guess maybe 2 of them are probably going to be more popular than the others, Rickie Fowler, Max Homa, and Justin Thomas. Rickie Fowler, very likely to be one of, if not the most popular player on the slate this week. 1, he is just a very popular golfer. Number 2, he is statistically the best golfer in this field over the last 36 rounds by a pretty wide margin. This is the power rankings, RickRunGood.com, raw strokes gained last 36 rounds. Only 1 golfer gaining over 1.3 strokes per round. Rickie Fowler's gaining 1.8. So the gap between Fowler, and the next best player in the last 36, Austin Eckroach, is the same gap between Eckroach and Nick Hardy-ish, which is golfer number 32. So it's a pretty sizable gap to show how well he's been playing. You can talk about strength of field, and if you want to look at the weighted strokes gained numbers, those are available to you. But it is a very good stat profile for Rickie, right? 4+ strokes gained from tee to green in 4 straight and in 5 of his last 8 or 6 of his last 8. Excuse me. The finishing positions are there. He's been knocking on the door. A couple of weak Sundays at both the U.S. Open and the event last week, the Travelers Championship, did not give him a chance to win the golf tournament, but this is a really good setup. We saw the adjusted course fit was favorable towards Rickie, and he's going to be one of the most popular golfers. The other two, I think, are more interesting. Max Homa coming off his 2nd consecutive missed cut. Again, for something like this, we probably need to look at this on a per round basis and see how much concern we should have. So now he's missed the cut at the U.S. Open. He's missed the cut at the Travelers Championship, being a positive driver of the golf ball, a slightly negative approach player, horrendous around the green, and pretty bad with the putter. That is what it's been for Max Homa. You go back a little bit further, and it's a bit of whack-a-mole. It's a bit of all over the place. He played well at the Charles Schwab, didn't play well at the PGA, played well at the Wells Fargo, didn't play well at the RBC Heritage or the Zurich. So it's been all over the yard. This is still a stat profile that is concerning to me, but I think that the well-rounded nature of his Friday round at the Travelers Championship gives me a little bit of reason to be optimistic. If you zoom out a little bit, 6 of his last 8 rounds have been positive rounds. I can deal with that. So it's really only those 2 bad rounds, and they came one on Friday at the U.S. Open and one on Thursday at the Travelers Championship, in which puts him in a spot where he misses the cut in both of those. So I'm not nearly as optimistic on the Homa stat profile as I am of the Collin Morikawa stat profile. But if everybody is going to overlook both of these guys and go to someone like Justin Thomas, which I understand, I'm happy to pivot to the Homa and Morikawa side of things. JT does feel like he's bubbling, right? He's brewing a little bit. The water's on the verge of boiling, or maybe on the verge of boiling, right? We're seeing, what he called the lowest he's ever been at the U.S. Open, and then to bounce back literally just a couple days later and gain 7 strokes on approach, which is the best approach week that he has had. Boy, definitely of 2023. Basically since the Valspar in March of 2022. So a very good high-end approach week last week around TPC River Highlands. That'll certainly come in handy. The concern that I have for JT around this place is, one, he's never played it, right? He added this because he's desperate to get into the top 70 of the FedEx Cup standings, and he's still, I'm not sure he has the putter to contend, right? I mean, if you gain 11 strokes from tee to green this week, you're going to need to gain a couple with the flat stick if you want to win. And when you're paying $10,000 for someone, you kind of need him to win. This is also now the most expensive he's been since the Valspar. I know it's a much weaker field than basically everything that he's played, but it feels like a little bit of a trap to walk into with Justin Thomas because you're going to need him to putt. So this 10K range to me comes down to focusing a lot of my attention on Collin Morikawa. If I didn't care about ownership, I'd probably be in on Rickie. And then if everybody wants to leave Max Homa alone, I would take probably a bullish stance on that, but I would prefer not to have to do that and just play Collin. The 9K range is pretty interesting. I'm a sucker for Cam Davis, and he has flashed brilliance around crap over the course of the past 5 weeks, right? He had a really good 2 rounds at the Travelers. I think it was Thursday and Sunday for him. He had the great Sunday at the PGA Championship. Unfortunately, missed 3 straight cuts in the meantime there. I've said in the past that if I could design a golf course that plays to the strengths of Cam Davis, it would look exactly like Detroit Golf Club. He won this event in 2021. He finished 14th last year. This is going to be the most expensive you're going to get, but I'm a glutton for punishment and a sucker for it, so I will probably be interested a little bit in Cam Davis. But to me, when I look at this 9K range, I look at Hideki Matsuyama at 9,600, who ho-hum gained another 5.5 strokes on approach last week, who ho-hum gained another 8 in the ball striking categories, who again, now for the 3rd time in 5 weeks, gained strokes with the putter, driving it the best he has since the Texas Open. Talk about guys that are brewing, right? Bunch of top 25, top 15 finishes. This is going to be the weakest field he's played in quite some time. Like, I see Decky getting back to the blueprint, right? The Hideki blueprint. He played this event in 2021. He withdrew, had gained 3.5 strokes ball striking at the time of his WD. Played it in 2020, finished T21. Played it in 2019, finished T13. So decent enough, I would argue good course history around this place, and he's playing great golf at the moment. Guys that worry me, someone like a Harris English, who is now pretty expensive and still fairly reliant on the putter at times. You know, he finished T60. See, we have to look into this one. So he finished T60 at the Travelers Championship, losing everywhere but around the green. I'm going to assume, and I don't remember this off the top of my head, that this was probably one really bad round on the weekend to punt these stats away. So let's look at this real quick and just confirm what we're seeing. No, so it looks like he makes the cut. Barely makes the cut and then kind of punts it away both days on the weekend. He loses 2 strokes on Saturday, 2.5 on Sunday, loses nearly 5 strokes on approach over the course of those 2 rounds. This again feels like a trap, right? You'll look at this and say, oh, that's 4 top 15 finishes in his last 7 starts, and he made the cut last week. I just, that worries me to death, that stat profile that we're seeing from Harris English. And then finally here, you know, Keegan, again, hat tip. We'll see you down the road. We'll catch up with you a little bit later. $9,200 for Keegan off of the biggest win of his, I don't want to say of his life because he won a PGA championship, but of his last 5 years, of his second half of his career. No, thank you very much. And then, you know, Sungjae, what did we get from Sungjae last week? Because he has been one of the more bizarre players that we've seen over the last couple of weeks with his inconsistencies. Well, the good news is he gained from tee to green every round last week. They weren't huge gains, but to see a little bit more consistency out of Sungjae is always important. And he gained a ton of strokes putting over the first 3 rounds before losing 2.5 with the flat stick on Sunday. This is an encouraging stat profile, especially after a handful of weeks where you saw a lot of discouraging stat profiles. Still worth noting that even during this really kind of weird, bad run for Sungjae, he still has had these really good rounds, right? So in his last 9 rounds, he's gained 4 or more strokes to the field 3 times, 33% of the time, which is still very good considering the finishing positions that he's put up. So I think that high upside is still there. He's trying to find that little bit of consistency right now, and I would trust Sungjae to get back to it fairly quickly. He finished 8th here in 2021. Yeah, so this 8K range. Now, this feels like the time to roll out Ludwig. Ludwig Aberg, if you haven't been paying attention, if you haven't been following, got his tour card via PGA Tour University, the kid out of Texas Tech, and he has now played 5 events on the PGA Tour or the European Tour this year. He has made the cut in each of them. He had a top 25 at the API, top 25 at the Canadian Open, top 25 at the Travelers Championship. He mashes the ball off the tee, gained 10 strokes off the tee in those last 2 starts. He will likely try to destroy Detroit Golf Club with the big dog, and he should. I love the way he sets up for this place. It is a fairly reasonable price in this field, right? I know it's $8,700. It's one of the most expensive. It's actually the most expensive he's ever been, but this is a much weaker field. He has shown us what he can do in the elevated events. This is a golf course that sets up perfect for him. Like, this feels like the time to roll out Ludwig. The other couple of guys in the 8K range that might be pretty good pivots would be one, Chris Kirk. So Chris Kirk is coming off 3 consecutive missed cuts. It's been very, very ugly. However, he's got 3 straight top 21 finishes here. Chris Kirk is kind of a course horse guy. I don't really have the data to back that up, but you know, when you think about what are the best courses for Chris Kirk and how often he is sticky in those courses, I think he's quite sticky and would certainly be on the more sticky side of things if we had a spectrum or a scale of stickiness, which is a very weird thing to say, but you can see generally gains across the board at Detroit Golf Club, generally putts well here, which is something that he struggled with a little bit as of late. So maybe this is the place that gets him back on track. And then Alex Smalley is also here in the middle of this $8,000 range. And you start looking at his stat profile and you're like, okay, you know, he's got the T9 last week where he gained 8 strokes ball striking, the Canadian Open, a top 25 where he gained 4. He missed the cut at the Memorial, but that was mostly on and around the putting surfaces. So now we've got 5 of his last 6 starts, he has gained at least 4.5 strokes ball striking. That is really good, and it is very reminiscent of what he did at the end of the fall swing. Remember the end of the fall swing? He was playing the best golf we had seen. He didn't want the fall to end. He went T11 in Bermuda, T4 in Houston, T5 at the RSM Classic, and you're like, yeah, let's go. He starts off the American Express, gains 8 strokes ball striking. That's only 3 measured rounds there at the American Express, or only 2 measured rounds at the American Express there, right? Because you play a 3-course rotation, so you'd only get that at the stadium course twice, and then he lost it. And now we're starting to see that back again. And this is what got everybody so excited for him this year. So that middle to upper $8,000 range of Ludwig, Smalley, Chris Kirk, I think is fascinating. I assume everyone goes down to Austin Eckroach at $8,000. Now, this is a situation where, we've been early on Eckroach, right? He's the second best player in the field over the last 36 rounds in terms of raw strokes gained total. You look at the finishes, they're impressive. We've been investing in Eckroach, and he has been giving us the big returns, but now he sits here at $8,000, probably very, very popular, and you start to get a little bit wishy-washy. And maybe this is a place where you take a stand and go for one of those other three guys in the 8K range while everybody moves to Eckroach. We'll see, and we'll know, especially on the Wednesday live chat, Rick Run Good YouTube channel, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have the projected ownership numbers. We can give a better idea of what we're looking for out of Eckroach, or what we can expect, or if we need to pivot. But it's well deserving of the what I perceive to be the projected ownership, but might be a time to just take a pass, right? He's proven he can do it at the U.S. Open. He proves he can do it at the Travelers and the Memorial. He can do this a lot of different places. We don't necessarily need to buy in when everybody else is also buying in. And I'll quickly ask you for your buy-in. The Rick Run Good YouTube channel, we are trending towards 30,000 subscribers. It's amazing. I love it. I want to bring all of you with me and see if we can continue to pump that up. It allows us to do more cool things and continue to just make improvements to the website and everything along the way. So we're headed for 30,000. Hit the subscribe button. We'll keep rocking and rolling for every single event. The rest of this 8K range, Benny On, I think, is a little bit fascinating. The golf course, let's pull up his stat profile here, because I think this is probably one of the better courses on the PGA Tour schedule for him. He should just be able to bomb it around and not worry about too much. The Travelers, even though he misses the cut on the number and actually plays pretty well, I did not think that was a particularly good setup for him. You want to allow him to unleash the beast, right? Which is what he does, gaining 3 strokes off the tee in 5 of his last 6 starts, and he hasn't lost strokes off the tee since the Valspar. So this is a much better place for him. Then he adds a little bit of extra on approach, and maybe you get a -1 with the flat stick, and it's a good week for Benny On. So this is definitely a much better place for him than TPC River Highlands was, and he actually played pretty well, all things considered. That course is just really, really bad for him. The 7s offer some heat, right? So if you go to the trends tool, you'll notice the guys who are playing above or below their baseline here. So I've got the last 36 rounds loaded in. Nikolai Højgaard is playing a half a stroke above his 100-round baseline. He's doing it in a way that's a little bit concerning. It's mostly in the short game, but he is a half a stroke better than his baseline, which puts him as like the 5th best trending player if you take into account everybody's baseline and then how they are playing over their last 36 rounds. You'll see Chez Reavie, no surprise there. The problem here, he's playing a stroke over his baseline, but nearly all of it is via the putter, which is a little bit concerning. So you can kind of scroll through these guys. Aaron Rye, Patrick Rogers, Mark Hubbard also show up well in the trends tool, and they're doing it in a little bit more sustainable ways. They're hitting the ball on their second shots a lot better. If you scroll down, you can see the guys that are kind of primed for a little bit of a breakout here. So this breakout candidates tool says, continue to hit the ball like you're hitting it, and then putt to your baseline. And you'll see Chez Reavie is like a big candidate for regression, quite honestly. Justin Suh, who's in this range as well, kind of a candidate for regression. And then guys in the upper left-hand quadrant, there's a little bit more juice to squeeze out of them. So Hideki, that's why Hideki's been popping up like in a lot of my models over the course of the last couple of weeks. There's more juice to squeeze out of this. Rickie Fowler, there's a little bit more juice to squeeze. Carson Young still in the correct quadrant here. Say that 5 times fast. Eckroach and Colin Morikawa, same thing. The other guys, Ryan Palmer, Harry Hall. I don't know what Harry Hall's price is. Is he in the 7K range, or do I have to save him for? No, he is in the 7K range, so I can show him here. Not that there's any hard or fast rules, like I can't jump down to the 6K range, but look at what Harry's been up to. One of, if not the best short game players in the world, and he's at times hitting it better. He lost a bunch of strokes from tee to green at the Travelers Championship last week, but he was much better at the Canadian Open, and basically a 0 at the Charles Schwab. So his pathway is a little bit more narrow because he's got the short game reliance, but there is still enough juice to squeeze out of it on that trends tool that it likes him over the last 36 rounds. How about Doug Ghim? Quietly back. We go from one Vegas guy in Harry Hall to another in Doug Ghim. And is anyone paying attention? Because this is the Doug Ghim that was a fantasy darling in early 2021 to mid 2021, where he'd gain multiple strokes ball striking and he'd be one of the worst putters on tour. That's called Team No Putt. Well, now he is back to striking it like that. 7.7 at the Byron Nelson, 7.9 at the Canadian Open, and 5.7 at the Travelers. And he's putting like kind of better. He's gained he's gained strokes putting twice in his last 4 starts. He's gained in 4 of his last 7. He has had one really bad week. That was the Canadian Open, but otherwise his losses have somewhat been mitigated. This is a pretty good stat profile from Doug Ghim. I mean, he's back from the grave here, right? I mean, he was horrendous for a large chunk of the last 6 months, and now we're starting to see things trending in his direction. Those last 3 events that I talked about, even going back to the Wells Fargo, I mean, he's got 3 top 20s in a row, 4 top 27s in a row. So Ghim hanging out here in the middle of the 7K range, offering quite a bit of value. Then finally, we'll do our weekly Kevin Yu check-in. So Kevin Yu played for the first time since the Pebble Beach Pro-Am last week, the Travelers, and gained another 3.5 strokes off the tee. Actually didn't hit his second shots all that well and putted poorly. You wonder if maybe he knocks off a little bit of rust last week, continues to drive it well, improves the ball striking. Where could he go? This is a little bit of a weaker field. He'll just continue to show up in all the models that talk about ball striking and things of that nature, especially because he's going to have a little bit of a smaller sample size, having the 4 months off for the injury. That would certainly skew some things. Callum Tarin leads off the $6,000 range. I think Callum has always been one of the more interesting golfers because when he plays his best golf, he's very good on approach and he's very good with the putter. And he's lost the putter over the course of the last 6 months. No, maybe not that long, maybe 4 months. And he kind of lost the rest of his game as well. But what we've seen now is his best 3 tournament driving performance in a while, his best 5 approach weeks, 5-week stretch in quite some time. The putter's still bad, but I don't necessarily hate this. The 6K range is pretty bad. He finished T20 here last year, so maybe he can find a couple of vibes out there on the putting surfaces. You turn this around and look at the best players over the last 36 in the 6K range, and Vincent Norrman laps the field here, gaining 0.8 strokes in total. You talk about guys who can mash it all over the yard. Vincent Norrman is that guy. Very, very long off the tee, has missed 3 cuts in a row, but he had a couple of good finishes before that. This would be one of the better spots for him as of late. And then here, I'm just going to scan this like this, right? So let's say we want strokes gained total. You want to be positive in strokes gained total. You want to be long off the tee. And you want to be a good putter. Who does that show up? Guys that drive it far. Vincent Norrman, we already talked about him, not a good putter. Jimmy Walker, yes. However, I would worry about Jimmy, quite honestly. Augusto Nunez, not a very good putter, but checks off the other 2 boxes here. Charlie Hoffman, not a good putter, checks off the other boxes, and that's basically it. So it goes to show, and it makes sense that there is not a guy in the 6K range that really checks off every box. It's going to be hard to find. Andrew Novak probably wouldn't be so bad. He's pretty well-rounded. He's not super long, but again, we're hoping here that we can find something in the 6K range. All right, custom model, RickRunGood.com. You can enter any number of weights that you want for any number of rounds that you want and find the best golfers for your ranks, and then also use those to build lineups and export them directly into DraftKings. So I think I want to be pretty straightforward here. I don't want to do anything super crazy. So we'll make our own driving, a little bit of distance, a little bit of accuracy. We'll put 18 on distance, 8 on accuracy. Okay. We will do opportunities gained 10 and opportunities plus gained for 10. So opportunities are putts inside 15 feet for birdie. Opportunities plus are inside of 10 feet or inside for birdie or better. So basically I'm looking for chances, right? How many looks are you going to have? Around the green, I don't really care about. I think if you're tapping into your around the green play, you're probably in pretty big trouble around here. I'm actually going to do bonus putting for 10 and then strokes gained putting last 50 rounds for 10. The bonus putting basically says, do you make all of your putts I think it's inside 5 feet. And then how many do you make outside of 20 feet? So basically, do you make all the ones you're supposed to make? And then how many do you make that like will be able to separate you from the rest of the field? We'll do strokes gained Detroit Golf Club for 10. I don't think it's super sticky or anything like that. So we have 24 left. Let's put 10 on easy courses. And we've got 14 left, which we will do. I'll do birdies or better gained. All right. So my number one golfer is, oh boy, sure, Keegan Bradley. I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean, the guy's been awesome. He's won twice in his last 16 starts. He's a great ball striker, gives himself a lot of opportunities. He has putted better as of late. And yeah, like I get it. Tony Finau is number 2. Number 3 is Sung Jae, which I find very, very fascinating. Even with his struggles as of late, he is 3rd. Rickie Fowler is 4th, and then things start to get really crazy here. Taylor Moore, 5. I love Taylor Moore. He hasn't played all that well recently, but checks out here. Brandon Wu is 6th. Tom Kim is 7th. Patrick Rogers is 8. Hideki is 9. And Adam Hadwin is 10. That is wild. Yeah, I get it, right? I mean, I've asked it for very specific things, so we're getting those very specific things. A couple of notables: Homa is 12th, Justin Thomas is 14th, Cam Davis is 17th. Anybody else I'm missing further down the board? Yeah, Colin is 37th. Should I just be ignoring that? Like, what should I be doing there? So, I'll save this. We can revisit it on Wednesday. So this is 2023 Monday Rocket Mortgage. We will review this, but man, wow. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. All right. That'll do it. Subscribe to RickRunGood.com. Subscribe to the Rick Run Good YouTube channel. I will talk to you guys soon. Lots more stuff coming. Check you out later.